When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching The Meta Show.
So, okay. When OBS, right? Let's roll that one again, shall we? Woohoo! Right, okay. It's because it's the first time I've done it on this computer, so it's all manner of weird. Okay.
They can hear us now. Chat confirms.
Hello, new
Goonettes,
computer.
gentle goons, Imperium citizens. We're so glad you could be with us. Big news this week, huh?
Yeah. So I was going to do that with the proper like hello and welcome to the Meta Show, which I did and you all saw but didn't hear. So there we go. I said it. Bit of housekeeping first. Next week there will be no show because unfortunately I'm working late. Kind of nature of the beast, working in a pub, but I'm getting my shifts changed, so that's shouldn't happen again. But we will be back the week after that. I know some people are upset there wasn't one last week, but yeah, sometimes it gotta happen. It just so happens it's happened twice in the same month, which is actually irritating.
If anyone in the chat can find a sacrificial scapegoat of some kind to co-host the show with me next week, I could be persuaded. Right, yeah, absolutely. Let's just volunteer your most hated enemy within the Imperium or outside. We'll see how it goes. It should be exciting.
I am working on finding a co-host, but we are going to get into this expansion because there's a lot to unpack in this expansion. Kaz, what were your first reactions to seeing the expansion?
We're almost at the end of the period where I don't know what to say anymore. Soon the numbers will be out and there won't be any distinction between what I know and what the player base knows.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting. I think there's plenty of stuff I told them in trying to set this up so that, so I want to be clear. I feel like CCP has listened to a great deal of what I said and ultimately we had a good influence on this expansion, but at the same time, it's not like I designed any of this. And so there are definitely pieces where I think that they will end up changing some of what you're seeing in the patch notes to over time, that they will realize that some adjustments to these mechanics are better. And that is sort of where my brain is going to, is the stuff that seems like it needs to be played in a certain way. So I'll start with the first example. We talked about the skyhooks, and they have this theft mechanic on them where they accumulate the reagents that they are extracting, and then as they're accumulated, every so often a certain amount of those will mature, I guess it's called, and then they can be picked up at that point. Or if the skyhook is attacked, then they are unlocking the skyhook. The enemy is unlocking the skyhook to steal from it. They can steal a portion of the mature stuff, and more of those are then destroyed. It seems like those things are basically equivalent to the ESS reserve bank, except in lieu of a key, you have to bring attacking DPS. And they don't throw off a region-wide notification. I guess allegedly it's only within a couple systems. So this is very, very settler-focused mechanic to me, is that this stuff, even though you don't have to do anything to produce the reagents, you need to have absolutely almost 24/7 defense. With reserve banks, at least they needed to bring a key. You could come from anywhere in the region. This is almost a little different. So that's one of my big thoughts. Is how is that going to play out? Will they end up changing that, and who does that favor? And what do we need to do to react? Is there some way in which we're configuring our space right now that does not fit that? Are there places where we're not going to be able to cover the skyhooks? I think at the same time, if you asked our military, and I don't think I'm leaking anything, any military out there is looking and saying, how can we do this to our enemies? How many skyhooks will they have? Will it be profitable to steal? Should we just go burning, raiding without actually attempting to seize to take the stuff out? So that's, I think, one of the big sort of fields of play is how is the skyhook stuff going to play out? How does that then link to SOV and the upgrades you can have online? How do people choose to spend their reagents first in the interplay of like getting the new crab stuff online versus all the upgrades you already have versus, you have to build the skyhooks in the first place. A lot of people, we can't even make full decisions again until we see final numbers, which aren't in the patch notes. But that, I think, is the most interesting topic is how are we going to change up our own space and our own behavior at home if we need to, in order to really make sure that we're not getting just nickel and dimed on the skyhook business. I guess that's my top thought. So I know we've talked a lot about skyhooks already, and there's a ton more that was announced just yesterday that we want to come to, but that's sort of where our heads are at, is how does the Empire, not how, but in which way do we continue the Empire optimally,
Yeah, was there anything that was kind of like a surprise to you that you didn't? You probably can't say what was a surprise to you, but was there anything in there that they hadn't even, told you guys?
I certainly had forgotten that the. Let me actually. I have to go verify that it is actually in the patch notes. Right, I had forgotten all about the problems with the other Serpentis capital and super capital builds that it looks like those are getting changed, where they had only done the Titans initially for some reasons. And I was happy to see that. I had mentioned it actually a long time ago, there were other CSM members who worked on it too. But I had just completely spaced that was a thing, and then it came out, and I was like, that's awesome. I'm so glad, because those were a mess.
Yeah,
so that's a really small one. It sounds like the migration process is actually not as thorough as I had hoped, and that there's going to be essentially, even when you transition to the shub from the iHub to the shub mode, that you're going to have to reinstall all the upgrades that you want rather than them migrating automatically, which is ultimately, maybe that's the only way they could do it. I'm not sure. But initially it felt like there was going to be even smoother migration process. Maybe this is best we get, but it does make me wonder, what, how much work it's going to be to get all that stuff constructed. Certainly the PI speculators are going bananas. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I personally, as a FC, was a giddy little school child when I saw some of the changes, especially to do with capitals that they hadn't mentioned before.
Yeah, let's go
like,
into that.
My God.
Yeah, sure. So the carriers are the big thing, right? Is there anything else that I missed?
Let's bring up the notes, shall we?
Go for it.
The right bit in this.
So while Dave does that, if you didn't catch the stream yesterday, CCP had a little stream with a couple of their directors, CCP Rattati, CCP Berger, but they brought on several other CCP staff. One is their new game design director, someone who is helping them organize their design team and get people to the right place in terms of what needs to be worked out for EVE's future. I am actually very happy. They seem to be getting along well. He's only been there a few months, but I actually recognize this guy. His name is CCP Okami, because of his previous gig. If any of you in the sound of my voice have played the game Dauntless, this is a Monster Hunter clone put out by Phoenix Labs that I happened to play during the pandemic with my roommate, of all things. It was a cross-platform, sort of monster beat-em-up game, but it actually had a really interesting prestige progression system built into it. And of course, as a systems-focused EVE longtime MMO player, I was lapping that up. And so when he got this job at CCP, I was actually kind of excited, and it seems like things are going well. So that was the dude with the big old beard, the director beard, who got to give us the bundle of joy. And so I'm pleased to see that going well.
Yes, so I didn't watch the stream. I've just read the notes because I was at work. However, this bit about carriers made me very excited. So this bit here is just a blurb about the fact that carriers are essentially useless now. So carriers will, after the patch, be able to do what blops and oracles can do and conduit people. But they can only conduit subcaps. They cannot conduit other capitals.
So it's up to 30, right? So
a
conduit jump is where
30,
you
yes.
5 to 30. A conduit jump is where it'll randomly select ships in your fleet that are around you and jump them with you to your destination. This is originally, like Dave was saying, a Black Ops battleship for Covops and a Rorqual with industrial ships capability. The carriers are now going to be the first one to bring a full conduit jump with full, normal fatigue and subcap usage, so you can really redeploy 30 of whatever you want to somewhere at carrier jump ranges, which notably are longer than a Titan bridge range. Even capitals continue to have a 1 light year base advantage over Titans and supers on the jump range, so really potentially very powerful. What's interesting to me is I see a ton of people going, it's a gimmick, it doesn't matter. And I don't know, being able to relocate 30 of whatever you want, it could be a gimmick. There are many gimmicky uses for that. I think it might be more than a gimmick. We'll have to find out. So what else did they give to carriers?
On that note, real quick, the gimmick of it, that's cool, but when I conduit with my other 30 carrier buddies a Harpy fleet on top of you, you're gonna be running, because one of the things they did to carriers and supers is nerf their ability to tackle. Wow.
Okay.
If I can conduit a whole load of frigates with me, I don't need my sirens to tackle you, because they're going to do it for me.
Sure.
And then you're going to die.
This is just a general, do you really believe this is going to give a carrier, say you have 5 carriers, so that you can bring a whole fleet with you? Is that really going to happen? Do you think that people will use carriers as a mobile deployment and relocation platform?
Maybe not offensive, but it will definitely be useful, like, defensively.
You think in home defense response?
Yeah. So the old days of you just dump a load of carriers on them. Well, there's several reasons why that ended. One of the big ones is you can't stop them running away.
Mm-hmm.
You bring a whole load of frigates with you, you're going to stop them running away.
Something will die.
Exactly. Be it the carrier or the target. So the next thing they've added, which this is the bit that made me really excited, is they have the ability to fit micro jump drives. Which, how micro can it be when it's on a carrier? It's more just a
capital
jump drive.
micro jump. Yeah, I mean, it's a micro jump in the sense as it's still inside the system. The jump is micro, but the drive is capital.
Exactly. So yeah, they have the ability to use a micro jump drive, except this one.
I should have known better than to drink something this small. Please continue. Sorry.
This one will jump them 250 kilometers instead of 100 like normal ships, which means they can get away easier. But the other issue is they can be warped to at that range. So it's swings and roundabouts, but it makes them harder to be burnt down.
It is interesting, right? Normally your boost puts you in the warp sort of no man's land, or now you're going to land out there. You can be probably probed almost immediately.
Well, yeah, you're in a carrier.
I don't know exactly what the time is. Yeah, but if it's fast and then and get warped on, so then what happens?
You just got to be quick on the cloak button.
Yeah. So then, but from here, there's a third new module, the Capital Micro Jump Field Generator, which does same distance, works exactly like the Boosh as it looks like. With it, there's a tiny alteration about when you land that we'll get into how that's going to play out here. What are the stats on that guy?
So that one, it can jump 50 subcaps. So unlike the subcap one that can, I believe it's 25 last time I checked.
That sounds right.
Yeah, it can jump 50 subcaps and 4 capitals. The capitals are not counted as part of the 50, so it can jump 54 ships.
Wow.
Now that is awesome.
You know, I pointed
In
out to
many
them at some
ways.
point during this process. I think I can't tell exactly how it went down, but I did point out to them at some point, if you choose 4 as the number, it means that a pair of carriers brings a whole squadron of capitals with themselves, a full 10. So I thought that was interesting. But that
Bring
really,
its own
that's also,
facts.
it's 2 full wings of subcaps that can come with them also then,
Yeah.
right? It's just bananas for relocation. And what I will say, what I loved to hear them put into words on that stream was that they view the role of the carrier as mobility focused, because that's what it is in the escalation terms. If you understand how each capital provides a different means of escalation, a dreadnought escalates just by numbers. It is numerically much more powerful per pod, per ship hull than the other capitals. A fax escalates through force multiplication. It dramatically increases the survivability and therefore the capabilities of all the other ships that are with it, even though on its own it's useless. It's a force multiplier. The
So
carrier's escalation ability is mobility. It's the ability to dictate range, to dictate where the fight will take place or where it won't take place, and threaten things at those ranges in a way that many other ships cannot. So I think these additions, maybe they do turn out to be gimmicky, but they're so thematic. And again, I didn't come up with these, but I think they're great for building Eve out the way it should be. It makes the carrier feel like what it should be. Maybe they will need either buffs or nerfs in the future, but it's such a good thematic addition. I love it.
I mean, the other good thing. First of all, somebody said in chat it's 30 subcaps. I've highlighted the bit where it says 50. So yet again, it's 250 kilometers. But the other thing is somewhat big about carriers that carriers are used for is holding a gate. Now, this is a scenario that I came up against when I was FCing capitals during the war in Delve. You've got no citadel on the gate, so you've got to sit in
Skynetting.
space. Exactly.
Hugely unpopular mechanic. Yep, continue.
Yeah. So, what happened in this instance is Dicta's got on top of my carriers. By all means, put Dictas on top of my carriers with a 250 kilometer MJD.
Right.
I'll leave the fighters behind and sod off.
It only, in a way, it doubles down on Skynetting. Not Skynetting specifically, but on fighter operation at distance. Right? You might have your fighters directly on you, then you get bubbled and you choose to CMJD away. But your fighters can still be there, right? Fighting. That is fundamentally great carrier gameplay to me. The issue that people have with Skynetting is that it's so often done off of tether, and your ability to reacquire tether just by dropping your fighters, that's too powerful. That should not be a 60-second, and you can get away with it. That's bad. But now all of a sudden it actually incentivizes the carriers to relocate, and that is just a dramatic change to me in how these are going to be played, right? If it is good for you as a carrier to try and relocate, all of a sudden we're not talking about tether all the time anymore. It just becomes a part of the battlefield, and that's awesome.
Fluffy, if you're using a carrier and your fighters are needing to be on top of you, you're probably already dead or tackled. So I can see how some people also may say it's a bit overpowered, but there are drawbacks, which we'll go into in a minute. But one of the big things that's cool about this as well is you mentioned dreadnoughts earlier. So picture it this way. The way you use dreadnoughts, especially long-range dreads, is you drop them in groups. So you drop in a group of dreads. Drop in a group of long-range dreads with some carriers. Hostiles drop, and this is something we had an issue with in, it was Abazan, I think it was. Hostiles drop in their short-range dreads on top of your long-range dreads. Mm-hmm. Then your carriers go, no, goodbye. Boost them 250 kilometers off.
Right.
Keep shooting.
And both groups can be trying this,
exactly,
right? We absolutely observed that the most interesting thing we learned from Abazan is that being outnumbered wasn't just being outnumbered. It was that we were both outnumbered, and they outnumbered us so much that they were able to rotate fleets out with the confidence that they would still outnumber us when a fresh fleet came in. being able to but the repositioning each time that happens is key because you're pursuing an escalation and counter escalation chain that involves range, and that it's a fundamental part of the game is your positioning. So giving carriers this ability is just, I can't wait. Even if at first it's gimmicky, it'll be such a dramatic change from what we've got now. It's exciting.
It changes up capital gameplay, which personally I don't think has been changed massively in a hot minute.
Not since Surgical Strike, which also everyone ended up hating, even though I want to say in CCP's defense, the player base at the time was hot for almost every change in Surgical Strike. Not 100%, and there were naysayers, but the game talked themselves into thinking that capital proliferation sucked. And in fact, that was a game where 50 carriers could kill 500 subcaps, basically without batting an eye. No one wants to go back to that either. But people do want to see them used and want to see there being a real meta, and I think this is a step in that direction.
Yeah, the other, before we move off the whole booshing thing, booshing to do this, the other cool thing is you could do things like, say you got a boosting Oracle, or your fax is in Siege, you can bring them with you, which is kind of the equivalent of warping your Logi about, in my opinion. So it just allows more. Yeah, super capitals cannot be boosted, but it allows more mobility, I feel, and that I think is some it's limited mobility. So capitals shouldn't have a massive amount of mobility because they're meant to be, the big fucker. But a certain amount of more mobility is good. It also just opens a lot of new avenues for gameplay from the eyes of a subcap fleet. You've got to think about more things rather than just, I'm going to sit a dictator on top of this carrier, haha. So it gets people thinking, changes things up.
Honestly, if anything, the way that this nerfs dictors, which are such a fundamental part of basic nullsec gameplay, is probably the most monkey's paw part of it to me, because there are just so many other things in nullsec where you can rely on a bubble unless you're watching for the very specific and limited dictor boosh. Now this expands that a lot, and I'm interested to see how does that play out. Does that mean that you basically just see the meta shift to people who are actually good with their scrams? Does something else happen? I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but I imagine it'll be interesting.
Yeah, it also gives people more to think about when they're tackling a carrier.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you can stop it jumping out of system by all means. Stop it warping off. You're gonna need a scram though to stop it booshing.
Right, exactly. Or to stop it MGDing. Yeah, or you might be wanting to scram your own capitals if they are under threat from a capital spearfishing attempt, right, with enemy carriers. We haven't even gone into that yet. But certainly people are going to attempt stuff like spearfishing here. I believe there's a minor self-scram when you land, unlike with the dictor.
Yeah, I was about to go into that.
Right?
Yeah,
okay,
so,
let's talk about that.
The caveat, and I think a good balance here, is after you've done it, any ship that is boosted, now this will work in the carrier's favour as well as work in everyone else's favour, but once it's MJD'd or once it's boosted, it will be scrammed for 5 seconds. Now, the big thing about this is that gives the enemy enough time to probe them down and get back on them because they're within warp range. They're 250 off. So, unless the carrier pilot's on the ball, they're going to get caught again. So it balances out nicely. NSA, yes, it cannot boosh itself or jump itself with an NSA on. However, it can be booshed.
Right.
With an NSA.
Yeah, so the carrier itself to be mobile cannot be doing NSA, but other carriers in NSA just behave like a sieged capital and can be brought with the field generator. They just can't jump themselves or use their own field generator, I believe.
So, yeah, as somebody said in chat, basically all you need is probes on grid at 0, which, if you're an FC of any amount of skill, you should do that or you shouldn't be leading a fleet. Oh my god.
Nevertheless, that's a great addition, right? Is bringing that in. Like I said, I can't wait.
bit more thought rather than just point the carrier, kill the carrier. It's like, yay. I mean, I do it all the time, but like, bit more challenge. But yeah, so the NSA, I think it's good that it can't do it itself with it on, but another carrier can, because then that can also work offensively. And think about it, guys. You can sino a fleet of carriers into a hostile dread fleet, and then boost their dreads, boop, massively different directions.
Sure.
So
I think
there's a
it is.
lot to play with here.
It'll be interesting to see who does not have any carrier doctrine developed at all and just can't bring this to the field. That may happen, and they might feel like they're just getting bounced around. But I think actually what's more likely is that this brings all of the people who don't like dreadnoughts out of the woodwork.
Yeah.
Whether they don't want to have the dread because they want it on an alt and this is their main, or whether it's I have these 4 super carrier alts from when super ratting was a thing and I don't have supers for them anymore, but now they can all be carrier. They can all be like marauding spearfish pilots or something like this. I think it's more likely that people have like giant complicated plans of we're going to use our carriers this way, and then the enemy does sort of the same thing, and people end up just all over the grid. It'll be a disaster.
It would be funny though.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
And with the mineral changes and the ability to get pretty much everything in nullsec again, it should hopefully bring the price down a little bit. It won't bring it all the way back down because PI is a thing. It bring it down a little bit. And to quote an unpopular person that used to sit in one of these 2 seats, caps are ammo. You can use the carriers as ammo.
It would be nice if they were more that way again, right? It's interesting because the force escalation topic at Capital should be a sort of outsized commitment. You're not getting as much for your money by putting all that money into it. So I appreciate where they were coming from and not wanting them to just be, close to insurance price. Clearly the pendulum is too far in the wrong direction. So what is speculated right now though is that a bunch of things could happen, and I don't know how it will go. We have the possibility is that mineral prices will fall dramatically. Another possibility is that either top end or low end moon goo could both fall depending on reagents, right? There's sort of one track where the reagents initially are very rare and expensive, and it's only worth it to use them for your metanoxes on R64s or R32s that for whatever reason you can't get to yourself. But obviously those are very valuable. People like to mine them. People won't want to do that. By contrast, if there's a ton of the reagents, or for whatever reason you are very successful at getting those from the skyhooks, then maybe it starts to become profitable to buy in R4s and R8s, and you just start as much extra reagents as you get, that's how much extra mineral you can get. Each of those would have different impacts, though. R64s and stuff are mostly going to hit the Tech 2 market. You could see Marauder prices fall, you could see Barge prices fall, you could see Ishtar prices fall. By contrast, if you're hitting R4s and minerals, you could see cap prices just fall dramatically. There's more stuff in the capital chain though, and this is, I'm going to come to there's a point to this. The trigger neurolinks got removed from pirate ships, and those are a major consumer of low-sec gas, which is called MICO, as opposed to CITO, which is the null-sec version. So it is also possible that the price could fall out of that gas dramatically as there's much less demand. We saw huge spikes in that gas just 6 months ago as Havoc came out, because there were all these new pirate ships and the only way to get them was building the things. So there's really a spike. I can't help but think that that'll unwind. But here's what's interesting. People are already paying the current list prices for all these capitals. So there is also a sort of stickiness effect where those will continue to sell probably at that price. People will not, they want them. They're buying them now. It is unknown to me as the prices of all the minerals or all the different materials settle out, where does that basket then land? Does it really all fall at once and you can build a cheaper capital, or does what happens is the rarest of those things doesn't actually fall because the basket is of such and such a size that still the rarest thing will have a big portion of the basket? And it might just be that becomes the new flavor of the month thing for crabbing, is whatever ends up being the rarest. Even if there's more of it now, that'll be where you should go make your money. We'll just have to see. The
other thing is, if build prices get cheaper, it doesn't necessarily mean capitals, for instance, would, because capitals, especially in our alliance with rules and such, it is very much set by the manufacturers. If most of the manufacturers decide, I'm going to keep selling these capitals, at this price and make a killing, you know, if everybody's doing it, they're going to stay the same. It will over time become cheaper, especially as capital proliferation goes back up. But
yes, that's exactly right. In order for the prices fully to drop, you need to cycle enough of the economy that people can make the money on the stuff that they built at the higher prices. There's a sort of connection between all these things that goes beyond just how macro 101 or micro 101 works. If we can keep that flow going and keep people buying, then I think there is a possibility of a sort of economic miracle as our crabs drive down the price of every material we can find. But every piece of the chain needs to be on like a clock to keep the flow happening.
So moving down, there's a few more things. I'm not going to go through all these, but they're adding faction fighters. I mean, I've never really... Bad. Yeah, I've never... It's basically like faction drones. If you can't use T2, these have higher hit points, less likely to die. But...
Sure.
Like, unlike... They have lower firepower, and quite frankly, if you're flying a couple of billion-ish ship, train T2 fighters. Like...
Yeah,
what's the point?
I'm sure this will actually, ultimately, I bet this will function as a sort of LP sync where they don't sell for much, but they sell for enough that you can always clear out your LP on.
They'll probably just be a flex, to be honest. It's like shadows. They're kind of a flex.
That is also possible. We'll see. Shadows at least have a use if you're in a bad spot, they will help you. But yeah,
because the blueprint is going to cost like 15 million per run on some of these, and so it's, who knows? I mean, I personally won't use them, but
right,
you never know.
That's what I've heard, but yeah, you never know. That's right. Maybe the Federation Navy Siren moves faster. I don't know.
Yeah, unless they do something like that, or then it's going to be pretty pointless because it's a lot of extra effort for the little bit. Scrolling down some more of the capital stuff, we'll just breeze over this one. Increasing Titan Doomsday damage, which I think is great because some caps have gotten tankier. Titans are meant to be the exterminate button. If they can't kill a standard capital ship in one shot with that Doomsday, that's stupid.
And I think they almost certainly will still not be able to, right?
No.
The numbers I'm being quoted are, it's more like now currently it takes 5 to 6, and then it'll take 2 to 3. And
yeah, it depends.
I think it's great, obviously, that they've done this, but I don't think it's a panacea either, especially given the cost.
The big difference we will see is in the next big war, in the next big Titan fight. Simply, it will take less Doomsdays to kill a Titan. You will see more Titans dying. For instance, M2, I believe, from what I remember, we were doing around 40 to 50 Doomsdays per Titan to ensure the kill. That was with that, with 1.5 million damage being the top damage. 3 million damage, essentially double. Half that, you're looking at like 20 to 25 Doomsdays per. So you're going to have more Titans dying. Woohoo. Yeah. It's essentially what this is causing.
That makes me wonder. That's kind of interesting because it suggests to me that actually Titans are now less tanky themselves by accident almost, even though everyone was focused on the smaller capital. But them becoming less tanky actually is worse.
Sorry, my camera's pissing me off.
Because it essentially makes it even less worth it to deploy them against other Titans. Although it makes them better if you are the one escalating first. But if you're getting counter-escalated on, suddenly you have to decide, was this worth doing in the first place? And the answer becomes no.
Exactly. I mean, I'll be laughing in my Ragnarok, but anybody that flies an Erebus,
Yeah.
It sucks to be you. But, yeah, it's definitely made a difference. Well, it will definitely make a difference in that. Because at the end of the day, the biggest threat to a Titan fleet is other Titan fleets.
Yeah, that is a good point that I didn't think about clearly.
Yeah, a dread bomb it may kill 1, 2, 3 Titans, but those Titans will mop up dreadnoughts. Mm-hmm. Or if they've got lances, I mean, Titans can tank a lance, so they'll just lance the shit out. But a Titan on Titan fight, this will cause carnage, and Casimir, you're good, but I don't know if you can replace that many Titans in one day.
It was tough the first time. I have no desire to be forced to repeat.
On that note, though, the amount that goons came together to do that as well, because like we had people in ASCII that had like second Titans that were going, "Can I give this to someone to use?"
Sure, yeah. No,
Here's a
it was the
Titan.
greatest.
It was nuts.
That was probably the greatest weekend of EVE Online I've ever experienced. I think it will take many years before something like that repeats, and it'll look different. It won't look like that one. There's a real end of history aspect to that, or beginning of the next phase of history.
So they're making some changes to the yacht. I mean, I don't really care about the yacht.
Sounds like a good change. Sounds like it was a real issue
Yeah.
for wormholers. Fine, no problem. I don't care.
Oh yeah, because it stops them rolling it.
Yes, exactly. They were getting used as rolling
That was
ships
a
instead of
pain
as
in my
luxury
ass.
ships. That's dumb. Yeah, I can't disagree. We
Auto
also took a
targeting
nerf here.
Did we?
Oh, no. It's somewhere else on the page. I wanted to mention the incursion business.
Oh, that's further down.
We had a good racket going in high sec for a while that they decided that was just not great game design and nerfed slightly. We had a SIG of ours was extorting a lot of high sec people for money over high sec incursions, just killing the mom immediately. So that worked so well that they've directly been nerfed. Can't really argue with it because they did it in a decent way. I mean, high sec is always going to have 3 days before the mom. Low sec will have 1 day, and for null sec, it's just status quo. You can kill it immediately if you need to. So I surprisingly little complaining about that. I look forward to us trying to still extort them, even at 3 days, because they will want to farm the thing the whole time still. But I was amused by them, by friends, Imperial citizens really causing such trouble that this ended up in the patch notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not the only ones, to be clear. There are other gankers out there that also we love unless they shoot us,
So, real quick, last thing on Capitals, they made the Vendetta and the Vehement cheaper, which you mentioned earlier, which I'm very happy about because I tried to build one of those years ago. And oh my word. Even though our allies control the space that the Serpentis parts come from, it was like 30,000 of the damn things that you...
Yeah, the Serpentis stuff was not well tuned, and especially unlike many of the other NPC pirate factions that have a suite of burner missions and a suite of other missions that can be run from a solid distribution of level 4 agents in the NPC nullsec, Serpentis just doesn't have that. And part of that is ancient. It's part of how Eve fit together because the Serpentis are contracting with the angels in lore terms, and they're less of a full pirate faction. But the net effect of that is that the LP was just not available, so giving them that type of ship was a mess. So I'm glad they've changed this. I think there might actually, you highlighted it, that might be a typo based on the other numbers we've seen, that 1500 should actually drop to 150. We have to investigate that.
Yeah, because this one's dropped to 50. Because
right, all the other ones dropped to a 2-digit.
The Vendetta is a really good ship. It's just obscene to get hold of the stuff. I mean, it's more... you see them more than, like, the Revenant, but that's because you can get the blueprint for Vendetta easier.
Exactly, right.
But, like, it is obscenely good, especially when you web people. Nuts. That some graphical changes. I mean, that's not... They're changing the way planets look.
Those skins...
look great. Yeah, they do look great. I like the...
People asked if PI would change, and the answer is no,
no.
Except it'll get prettier.
Skinner, which me and Brisk covered. I'm just scrolling through this. Corp projects. They're changing the ship tree, which I like the idea of. Changing the way all that looks.
You also have a new layout for your hangar, which gives you cards for each of your ships if you want it. Now that's optional. People have been losing their minds, but that is just if you can't click on it here, right? But if you click, there will be in the little hamburger 3 dots, you'll be able to pick like what type of layout you want.
See, I like this idea just because my hangar's a mess, and I think that's neater. So yeah, they're making some changes to ship tree. We're going to breeze over these because there's stuff up the top to do with sites and stuff that's more interesting. And manufacturing stuff other than, I believe somewhere it said they're making faction blueprints harder to get? Well, not harder to get, but different.
Not the blueprints. Many pirate ships and some Navy ships up until this point have been available two ways from the LP store: buy the hull, or you buy the BPC and then you make the hull. The first way is just essentially going away. No longer will you be able to buy a hull direct. You just got to get the PPC. The second thing that's happening is, because there are a lot of people, I might be one of them, who are sitting on a lot of pirate BPCs for certain ships. What will change now is they're getting a new resonator added, a component that replaces the microcyrus component, replaces what are called the trigger neurolinks. That component is bought for LP. And so essentially, even if you are a large scale BPC haver, you will need to invest additional LP to build the pirate ships. That's the new model. So the goal is to put all of the extra value of the pirate ship not into the build, but onto the LP itself, without giving too much of a windfall to hoarders. And I think that will work. So these are really good changes. I know that Angry invested a lot of time into sort of setting the road out for this to be able to happen. I want him to get credit. He worked very, very hard, and we're very happy that they embrace the possibility here. So,
real quick, looks like they're making T2 cap guns cheaper. Happy days, because
yes,
my Titan guns, Jesus.
It has gotten out of whack in a way that I think they didn't anticipate. Morphite used to be different. All minerals used to be different. Yeah. So I'm not actually a huge fan of having to change blueprints constantly. The less we can do that, the better. But I think that this will be fine.
So yeah, let's go up to, because there's stuff to do with PvE and mining as well, which is really interesting because they're doing mining escalations, which intrigues me. We're going to scroll up real quick here, guys. Right. So first of all, something I'm going to talk about on the Sovereignty Hub. And from the way I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, you won't be able to have all upgrades in every system.
No one officially knows.
It
so
depends
what
on
we
the
do
power.
Understand. Yeah, so what we do understand is that power is unique to the system. It is based on the power planets and your sun. It apparently can't be modified, so there's a sort of a hard cap. But there's a second, and these are static, right? However much power you have, that's power you have. It works just like Power Grid based on your Skyhook output. Same thing almost with Workforce. You can think of it as like CPU if you want. It's a second fitting thing. It is static, except that each S-hub, each shub has the ability to say, I'm going to either send Workforce somewhere or bring Workforce from a neighboring system. So if your systems are all linked, you can create a network that moves some Workforce around and make sure that any one system that doesn't have enough can get more, or vice versa. How diverse that is or how dynamic, haven't seen it in action yet. So all of your upgrades are going to consume some combination of power, workforce, and the reagents which are extracted from the laminized planets. So we anticipate, of course, that you won't be able to therefore put literally everything into a shub, but you will be able to put as much as you want, subject to those limitations and what we can do with them. We'll have to find out how that goes, and we don't know how to necessarily, we haven't even strategically agreed on what is right. If I asked 10 goons, what is more important to you, a jump bridge or a super capital construction yard or a pirate upgrade or a mining upgrade or underpants gnomes, I would get 10 different answers. So these are questions that we have to examine as an alliance, in part because we never had to before. Since we don't rent, we don't have to think about that set of choices. We just upgrade everything we can and farm it as hard as we can. Now all of a sudden we're going to have to turn our brains on. So in a way, this expansion could be very dangerous for us because we don't have those. But we're really hoping it's worse for our enemies because they have even less.
Yeah, and they're going to have corps that,
brains,
for instance,
that is.
Horde, for instance, we found out a few weeks ago, rent systems to their member corps, which if Kaz ever turned around to Ascendance and went, you have to start renting this system, he'd probably get told to, So
they're all very unhappy. They're very happy with their model, and more power to them. I look forward to
this
the
will
future.
Just change it.
We're going to have a great contest of who was right.
I know who was right. So yeah, that is definitely interesting. Because you have to essentially check every planet, every system in your space for what it's got. It also adds a ton of more work for GSOL. Because you got to move all those reagents around to all the different shubs, which I wish we could have had SoPleb on here to discuss that, but as a member of GSOL, I'm looking forward to the extra tasks, not looking forward to the pain in my ass.
Right, yeah, I mean, we're going to have to see how that plays out. How often can they be collected? How often will people want to? Is it a drain on your resources? Is that something that helps you with theft, right? Can you collect early to block thieves? Is that too much of a drain? Who can do that successfully? These are all dynamic sandbox questions, I suppose.
I see it as a great opportunity to screw over hostiles solve as well.
That, I mean, it's interesting, right? If you take out a skyhook and it means that not all of a sudden that system doesn't have its jump bridge upgrade anymore. That's much different than if you just kill the jump bridge and they anchor a new one. Potentially. Now maybe it won't be, maybe you can just anchor a new skyhook. I don't know.
Also, when it comes to attacking, take out a skyhook, reduce the power in the system.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Sinusaur Jammer goes down.
Yeah.
Hello,
very interesting
Superfleet.
possibilities.
Yeah, so the TCU's going away. Thank goodness. Unfortunately, I think it's still in Tosis. They haven't mentioned too much about how you know.
That is accurate, right? So Aegis Sov itself is still in place. It's unchanged as far as we can tell. The shub you anchor a shub and it's neutral. You use Entosis to capture it. It's just like everything else, just like you expect now. It's just the TCU is gone. That doesn't exist anymore. So, but indexes, as far as we can tell, work the same. The upgrades no longer require the military and the industrial, the mining index, but the indexes still exist and still affect ADMs. And so ADMs all still work. The timers are all still the same as far as we've been told. That's the part that's not changing. That they would love to examine that, but it was good to get this out of the way. And the goal is to use this to juice the value of space and make sure that all space is under some sort of use and it matters who controls it.
I have been the next step will probably be changing up the way you conquer space, because I like all the changes, but goodness gracious me, Intosis can go screw itself.
I mean, this is the sort of the song of Citadel in a way, is that Aegis presented a way for battles to matter in multiple systems. And it turned out everyone hated that. But it is different than the pitched battle. And then all of a sudden with Citadel, what happened was that some Citadels became so powerful that you ended up with pitched battles on them. And in particular, you could just anchor them wherever you wanted. You didn't have to control the system. They became used as a forward operating base also. And so their same mechanics were applied there, and it's sort of now it's a battle of who can drop the most aggressive forward citadel, and then you fight who can force the other party into fighting on their opponent's citadel for whatever reason first. That is not the spirit of Aegis, right? The spirit of Aegis is to break that paradigm and make it so that with a little bit of creativity, it can drag someone to a fight somewhere and capture the node somewhere else. How they bring that back without everyone hating it, and in the world with citadels, I don't know the answer to that yet, and I think they don't either. But that is a conversation we need to be having: is how to find a concept for Aegis that is not widely hated, but delivers some of the promise of that and unwinds what Citadel has done in making it always about that one pitch fight.
Yeah. Real quick, in our last 7 or so minutes, we'll quickly breeze on the upgrades because I got a lot of questions about this earlier. So for any of you guys that were in Corp chat earlier asking me about this, here we go. So the upgrades displayed on your screen. For the average line goon, you do not need to worry about these particular ones. These are the ones that people like Kazanir, SoPleb, Basher, all that will be going this here, this here, this here. Quite frankly, in my opinion, coming from an FC, every system must have all three of those because it makes it easier to defend. It's my opinion. I can complain about it, but I don't really have a horse in the race. That top one, not every system will have one of them, same as current, because you don't need to build supers in every system.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how costly the strategic ones are,
Yeah.
right? Certainly there's a case for this being a big trade-off. These are very powerful, and I think one of the weaknesses of Sov since forever has been that you could put these in almost every system and you're only paying ISK. That is not a real trade-off if you need this thing. It just is not, right? They're expensive, it's true, but it's not a real trade-off. So I think wiring them into the overall reagents power workforce is going to be very good, even though I imagine that a lot of nullsec is going to be sad that they have to decide these things now.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
But the other thing is I believe I read you can pull them out or you have to self-destruct the shub to remove them.
I think that sounds right. I think there's a way to get them back if you delete, but I don't know if that's only migration connected. I'd have
but
to
you
look.
can't. From what I read while I was on my break at work last night, you can't do what you currently do, where you just get rid of one, put another one in.
You can destroy them in place. Yes,
Okay.
you can delete them, but you don't get it back if you do that. Is my understanding, right? The only
So-
way to get it back is to can the whole thing.
Yeah, the big important thing for all those that like PvE and all that, these three here are the ones that keep you safe and allow you to move about. They're important.
Yeah.
Now, they've added a lot. So in the current iHubs, you have, for those that are familiar with ADMs, you'll probably know a bit about this. You have pirate detection arrays, 1 through 5, which give you the different types of anomalies. Number 5 giving you the havens and the sanctums. Same with the or prospecting array, gives you the different anomalies. They've changed this up a bit. So you've got the minor threats. These are from what I understand, these are your rally points, your stuff like that. The stuff you would run like a Vexer in. If you run a Vexer in a Haven, and these ones here are the ones that you would, they're your sanctums, your havens, your soon to be whatever they've called the capital one, because there's a new one. It's a Forsaken Sanctum, I think. Which that's a topic for another day.
Yeah, sure. I didn't think about it. Yeah, it does make sense that they would add in the missing, like Forlorn, Forsaken.
Yeah. There it is. We'll breeze over that in a minute. But so these will dictate the tougher ones. Now, personally, these are the ones that you'd run your Stormbringers in. The other interesting thing is these ones, the higher level you go, the faster the sites respawn, where currently it is set at a particular time.
They put that in there, huh? Yes.
Which I love
respawns, that. Yeah. The way respawns are going to work is changing somehow, right?
Yeah. I would love that, because quite frankly, I go through havens in my Stormbringers like nobody's business. That's amazing. Make them spawn quicker. Moving on to... We'll touch on the mining stuff real quick. You now have prospecting arrays, not just for ore, but for every type of mineral, with the exception of Northite, because
Morphite.
Screw deep core mining. So basically, if you need trit, it will make asteroid belts that are rich in trit. So Valdspar, for instance, will be abundant. They're adding some new ores that have large amounts of Mexilon, trit, and pyrite, for instance. You can see here. So this is what we'll talk about, making ships cheaper, because the minerals are going to get cheaper because they're bringing it back to nullsec, which is a thing that was a pain in the ass when they changed that in the first place.
Well, yeah, I mean, and we'll have to see, right? nullsec is not as powerful at mining as it once was. We are
especially with Oracle's changed.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll have to see how it plays out, but at least for someone who wants to say I'm going to push these levers to the max and give my work something to do, they can choose to try and do that, and we will see what happens. So there will be an impact. How big is it? I'm still unwilling to predict, but it's obviously better than the alternative.
Yeah. So that's really great. I used to love mining. So that's great. And quite frankly, on these, at the moment, the only thing that I mine occasionally is moons. But on these, I would happily get my Oracle out and, have some waste to get some trit, which you can't normally get. Other people may disagree that min-max, but I'm the sort of person that likes to sit there, stick some drones out, and go do something else. So, happy days. Also, escalations. They haven't said much about how this works, but there will be mining escalations, which is intriguing.
Yep.
Massive amount of all types of ore, which yet again brings tons more resources back into nullsec, which I think is great.
There's one at Spod, right?
I miss the big spod rocks. I'll set my oracles up on them and just go play Call of Duty. So Forsaken Sanctum, really quick because we're running out of time. It's basically a use your caps in here sort of jobby. Anything else will probably die, and I cannot wait for Ishtars to attempt to do this and die, because I'm gonna laugh. And new escalation sites, so like capital ones, which will be interesting.
Yeah, it looks like they have. It looks like they essentially have a starbase, a POS type thing that you have to shoot. A shipyard, the faction spawn, and the officer spawn.
So it will bring capital ratting in Anoms back. Whether the risk reward is good enough to make it have a point, like for instance, bring back super rating. If those sites make you tons of ISK and super's price goes down because of the changes, that may it may be back.
We'll see.
Who
I think
knows?
you will see. This is something that I love. We have one of the best economies in the game, if not the best. I think we have the strongest sort of internetworking within the Imperium of people being able to specialize, and specialization here, all that means is the bookmarks channel and being able to sell people your escalation, so maybe you don't have to worry about it. You're Stormbringer guy. But these will generate something that will bring other more experienced pilots out in their capitals to run those. That's something that we can home defend. If you're not, you don't know how to do that, that's okay. We as a whole are good at this type of content, so I'm stoked for this.
Somebody will make a thread that will tell you how to do it.
So 3 people will make threads.
Yeah. How do you think I learned to Stormbringer that? I'm not one to spend time on PvE. Somebody made a thread. So, just to round up, lots of exciting changes. There's still a lot we don't know, a lot of stuff that we will have to work out as you go, because remember, we've had years to perfect what we do at the moment. This is going to change essentially everything.
Yep. Can't wait.
So it will be interesting. It will be a great time to screw with our enemies. It'll be a great time for them to screw with us. It will make a lot more fights. I can guarantee that one, because there's a lot more to do. And it's just an exciting time. For those concerned about switching, there's a certain period where the Alliance can optionally switch them, and I'm sure they will do that in their time when time is right. And
that's right.
Won't happen all at once.
Some systems will be changed. We have until the very next expansion, all the way in the winter, whenever that is, to make the changes. So at that point, everyone will be on it. Asher even mentioned this on the fireside, that he thinks that's when things will really kick off, because he suspects that many parties who have too much space will put off the migration as long as they can. We'll have to see.
Imagine having half of of nullsec.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, imagine that.
Yeah,
exactly. For the renters.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
But that's all we got time for today. Don't fret. The Alliance will change things when they change things for the goons in here. For any hostiles, do it all at once, please. Do it all at once. It's a good idea. Right. It's been great, guys. I've been Dave. He's been Kazanir. Any last words?
Thank you, citizens. Nope. Stay classy, New Eden.
I have one last thing, though. kills his outro because Life Shifter will kill me. Tomorrow there's going to be a special episode of Cartridge to Cloud talking about the Xbox announcements that are coming out tomorrow. It'll be around this time. Check it out. Some exciting stuff. You may even see me there. But I hope you've enjoyed the show, and we will see you next time. When I find my button.